Guys, we have to talk about this. Why do I look so pale? Nah, but for real, look, I'm Digimon's greatest dig writer, and to my credit, this is my first ever TCG, so I've never experienced the power creep in the way that they do. But recently, a lot of people have been talking about a new card that's coming out in the next set that is really, really strong, and they might be right. Now, for clarification, as someone who's, again, in the grand scheme of things, new to TCGs, one of the things that I've seen recently that has low-key bothered me, and also made me realize I do, is us dogs will complain about anything. Every new set has a devil of the meta. Every new card is gonna ruin the game for good, and most of the time, that shit hits the game and has rarely to no impact. The most standout, like, immediately to me is, like, Lordknightmon X. Which, to be fair, has a lot of tops now, but it really didn't on its release. Or the opposite effect of almost no one looking at the cards, and then suddenly a set or two later, Miragegaogamon hits the scene to become one of the strongest OTK decks at the time. Now, with all that being said, I want to clarify that this video isn't here to bash one card or doom pill you that Lordknight X is going to ruin this game. I kind of just want to talk about my thoughts as I've played a couple games with it now on Drasil, and how I see it being released into the wild of our locals. I'm a little bit biased, obviously. I can only speak on how it's felt, what I've seen in Japan's meta through East's videos. Fantastic videos, by the way. I really enjoy the way that he explains, you know, meta analysis and whatnot. But we all might end up having a completely different experience, you know, come November when this combined set gets released. Maybe your entire locals all gets access to it, and every single player comes first at the same time. Wow! So Lordknight X is coming out in the next set, combination of two, which is happening as we catch up to Japan in our releases. We're really close now. I'm pretty sure it's like February we're going to be aligned, and that's crazy to think about. Like, this is going to be really exciting for deck building. To put it lightly, this card feels like it's going to make some heavy waves. Normally, I hate it when people doom and gloom about cards because, again, they're usually wrong. But let's really quickly take a look at this card's text, then we'll take a look at its application in a deck, and finally, I'll explain in gameplay terms what I really think makes this deck insane. So if you've never watched any of my videos before, hi, I'm Dane. I make a lot of Digimon content. It's really all over the place about what I'm gonna do. It's kind of a lot of the times what I feel like. It's never just gonna be deck profiles. It might be deck profiles sometimes, but if you enjoy what you're watching at the moment, give me a subscribe. I'm always looking to do something interesting and a little bit more out there than just deck profiles, hence a discussion about a card today. So if you like what you see, consider giving me a subscription, but let's just get straight into it. Let's talk about Lordknight X and why it's going to kill the game. So let's talk about this card, word for word, text for text. Starting with Collision. Alright, so Collision, as the new addition to this game, has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed the way that it's worked. You know, for black as a, you know, a color, it's a really good inclusion into the way that it deletes and interacts with the board. Very, very happy with it so far. My issue, immediately standing out, that I want to point out in this card, is that it also has piercing. Why? Why? What about black and purple actually stands out and says to you, this needs piercing? Or rather, what is like purple and black are never colors that really ever get piercing. You know, specifically when we look at Dex or Agora, you need to really work hard for that to get it underneath your Digimon as a tamer. And now, what is it, 2 sets later, and we immediately have kind of, I hate to use the word, power crept it a little bit in terms of giving it both collision and piercing on the same body. That's a lot. That's a lot. Like, it's a card now that gets to do both of what it does, or what it wants to, because Collision was kind of a trade-off of like, well, there's something on the field, you have to walk through your opponent's entire board before you start doing checks. Now it's just here. Now it's just like, cool. Collision and piercing, which is a little crazy, to be honest. Collision and piercing is a lot to put together in one thing, especially for like a black and purple card. And I kind of want to like bring that up like straight away as well. Is this is a black and purple card? Black finally gets a you know, what's the word for it? A good card. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. And I cannot remember the last time that we've had a card that was, you know, solely black and good. But I'm not well known for remembering things either. So, so this is way more on the side of a black card than it is a purple. There's not really much of a reason for this to be a purple card, other than the fact that it, you know, synergizes with the rare Lordknight, you know, that is a purple card as well. Or the bottom end is kind of purple-black, but, you know, all of these effects really scream, you know, black to me, which is funny because I have been saying now for a long time that Digimon is way, way less color-reliant and a lot more archetypal, you know? I've had people in comments who are like, oh, you know, top 8 is just blue and purple, and it's like, that's, you know, still 7 different decks. But sure, cool, whatever you say. It is what it is. Like, the game is a lot more archetypal now. But let's just move on. I'm on a tangent already. When digivolving for each of your Digimon, digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon, then, until the end of their turn, one of their Digimon can't digivolve. So let's start with this. Let's break it down. For each of your Digimon, digivolve one. So this starts at 1, and then adding other bodies to the field is going to digivolve one Digimon up to 3, up to 5. It doesn't matter how many. It stops at a rookie. It's just like it's digivolving a lot on one Digimon, right? So, because I know that a lot of people are going to ask that question a lot, because we did when Chaosdramon came out. They're kind of often worded in a little weird way that says like, oh, you know, can I digivolve one time on a bunch of different Digimon? No, it's just one Digimon. Because I had to go through that hell, so I understand where you're at if you're asking that question. But it's really easy to get bodies on the field. With the deck that I'll show you in a second, it's very, very easy to drop bodies on the field, and just digivolve at least 2, maybe even 3. It's not a hard requirement to meet. So a lot of these decks are going to suffer under the sun of having to be digivolved. And digivolve, currently as it stands, is one of the strongest effects. For the longest time, I have been saying that it is bounce in terms of, you know, Blue's ability to just, you know, bounce a Digimon into your hand. But even bouncing can trigger, you know, when this Digimon would leave the battle area, an effect will trigger. Whereas digivolve just skins it. Just skins the top off it and says, fuck you. I don't want to hear anything about what your effect does. Now you're down to a rookie, and I'm just going to walk over you. So it's definitely by far and above the strongest, but the access that both black and a lot of decks have had to digivolve has been not enough for the most part to actually allow it to have an impact. And this is going to be a card that allows digivolve to have a really, really strong impact. So, cool. That's great. Second half of that, one of their Digimon can't digivolve. Even if you aren't clearing that body, you're passing turn because you paid 4 with this Digimon to get into Lordknight because you didn't have Lordknightmon, not the X antibody. You are still stopping your opponent from moving forward, from doing things. This is why a lot of us thought that Hina's Dragon Links was going to be crazy, and then it kind of didn't end up being that crazy because it took too much to actually activate those effects. But, mamma mia, dude. Just straight saying, no, don't digivolve is an insanely strong mechanic. If somehow you are unable to collide and pierce over whatever it is you just digivolved. So, yeah. But you can, it's as an aside, target a different Digimon to the one that you digivolved for not being able to digivolve. I hope that makes sense. You could target 2 different Digimon. Woo! That's hard to say. Moving on, all turns. While Lordknight or X antibody is in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, all of your Digimon with Knightmon in their text gain Alliance and +3 KDP. Dog. As if the last 3 to 5 lines of text weren't enough. This is so much. Like, in playtesting now, and trying this card out, I am so So bewildered that this is here. I understand that this was kind of originally meant to be like a block and redirect deck. Who cares about blocking and redirecting if you can just, stand up, do 4 checks with Alliance, because we'll talk about, how you want to suspend in the next section. 4 checks at least 15k, and if you're alliancing, you're doing, 17, 20? You do so much damage so easily. So easily. You don't care what is insecurity anymore with this Digimon. 20k is so easy to hit. Your opponent's gonna be pissed when you force them to collide into the 20k Digimon. And then you go, oh, well, so many Digimon at the moment can what's the word for it, become 20k massive dudes. On the crackback, it's all turns. You're still at least 15k. Just base. You are at least 15k. And that's, you're just sitting there, 15k. You can't be DP reduced. Like, it's so difficult to DP reduce this down to 0. Just little things like that. It doesn't have the kind of protection in terms of, like, bounce and whatnot, but if you, time this correctly, you don't care whether or not this gets bounced on the off turn that your opponent can't, tempo out another Digimon to crack back immediately. You've just lost 4 security and you bounce 1 Digimon. Cool. Like, that's not enough. So, I might be hyping this up a little bit too much, but this is a really strong card across the board. It's a strong card. I really think this is a strong card. So let's move on really quickly to I want to show just a kind of a quick deck list that East actually shows off in his video, where he's talking a little bit about like the meta tier list and what he thinks or what is making waves in Japan at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit more up to the side here, but let's take a quick look at this list and why currently the Dark Animal engine is just insanely good for what these kind of decks are trying to accomplish. So, one of Gabo X, you want to draw trash. Goblimon, gain a memory every time you trash a card, which you immediately get off of the Dobomon X. Gazi at 4. Now, so again, to clarify, this is the list that, what's his name? East has been, had propped up for Japan's meta. There's only 2 additions. One, there is a 3rd Lordknight and I think it's, the Dobomon regular here that I changed because we're not going to get scramble cards until like December. So there's not really any worth in talking about it now. But yeah, so let's keep moving. For Gazi, if you expect to see this at your locals or anywhere else, you will want to be just running 4 of memory blockers now, because every card gains every deck gains memory. Every single one of these cards will gain you an extra memory in the short term, and blocking those because they are mandatory effects is going to be super important. So and Psychmon, they're dealing with the cross art at the moment as well, so great to have. You don't want your board to be Death X'd as well. This fucks with SGDL. Cool. Let's move on. Ogamon is great for another draw trash, gain memory. Cool. Doba and then Doba X. The one that really interested me here was the Deltamon, which is great to just be, if your opponent is just playing out a bunch of Gazis, now you have a way to deal with that a level, just 3 possible ways, like on play, when digivolving, and on deletion to delete a level 4 or lower is very schmick. It's nice. It's nice. I'll tell you that much. It's nice. And like the blocker inheritable is there, but it's pretty good. And then the really important combo here too, again, is, so when we say Dark Animal package, engine, whatever you want to call it, at the moment, it's super homogenized. It's Dober X, it's Protoform, it's Cerberus X, and Cerberus. If you can fit that into, and what's it called? Goblimon as well. If you can fit that into any deck that is purple at the moment, man, the deck just gets exponentially better than what it was. It's so much better when you can just, gain a bunch of memory and essentially go free Digivolve into your level 4 with the training, and then 1 cost Digivolve into into your level 5. If not a 0 cost a lot of the time, because you're gaining 1 off the trash, and then you're gaining 1 off of the play out the small Digimon, and you're also reducing your Digivolve by 1 because of Protoform. And and you're getting a body as well, and drawing and trashing. There's so much memory gain, so much draw trash in these decks that I totally understand when people start running a bunch of one-ofs, like Anubis, one of a Levia. Great. The thing that surprised me, but I completely understand now, is the Bastemon as well. Like, this Bastemon is crazy too. I didn't actually realize like how decent it was until you like start playing it. I did like it in a couple of the decks that I was playing with like Dan Devi, but the most important part here is the second half, or in the inheritable of opponent's turn. When an opponent's Digimon is deleted, play out a level 4 or lower purple. If somehow you haven't killed your opponent instantly, God forbid, and they swing into your Digimon, you block with a 15k body on anything, great. Here's another level 4 out on the field now. Great, deal with that. And yeah, I really, really like the second, like the inheritable of this effect. It's crazy. One of Anubis, why would you not run this card in this deck? Considering the fact that, again, if you go Anubis, play out a, what's it called? A Doba X, for example, give itself retaliation. That's free. If you're still keeping turn, you only have to pay 1 to go into your, Cerberus X with a Protoform, and then you just make another Lordknight. I don't understand why you would not run an Anubismon in this deck, but, to each their own, I suppose. Levia is maybe the most, like, I don't know. Levia is just such an insanely good card that I just don't think, like, I think, like, running this is totally fine. It's definitely what looks to be a bit of a flex spot. If you wanted to run a bit of a change up on your rookies, run Merva instead, and, gain a bunch of memory, a bunch of board presence off of playing a bunch of dudes out, sniping the board with Anubis. I think that's, like, totally fine. Have a secondary boss, because, that just gets so much more pressure if you've done 4 checks to your opponent, and then you're just, hey, here's a bunch of rush bodies that are just going pop, 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 pop on those last 2 checks. Your opponent can only put up so much defense against something like that. So take with that what you will. I think the Levia is crazy. And then the 3 and 3 of Lordknight and Lordknight X, I think in the other list it's like 2 and 3, because we run the 4 protoform, so you don't need the regular Lordknight. And the regular Lordknight is good. It's alright. It's not great, but it does its job, so, might as well have it as the boss. But I feel like if we don't have scrambles, you might as well have a 3 and 3 split. Or, you can add another level 4, another level 3 if you are so deadly worried about, what's the word for it, just missing out on a piece. But I think that's almost impossible in this deck, considering that you're running 7 trainings and boosts, which searching is just one of the best, like, possible things that you can have in this game. And if your engine allows for this much in terms of searching, memory gain, resourcing your opponent out the wazoo, then why not? So that's just a quick, like, understanding of why the Dark Animal engine is, like, so good. And I guess it ended up being a little bit of a deck profile. Cool. But Ruin Mode is crazy as well. I forgot to mention that card is just, if you can fit it in a one-of, it's just a insanely generic card in red and yellow, or purple and your yellow decks. But like, to double down on explaining to you why the engine is crazy, you're getting rush bodies, you're getting more bodies. If you play level 3 off of your Cerberus X, and then you go into Lordknight X, you'll be like, oh, cool, if I kept turn, which you so easily will be able to. You have so little to do in terms of, setting up to be able to do this. 1 training will get you all the way to your level 6 and keep turn, with this kind of engine. And then now you have a body to alliance with, and more importantly, to use the inherited effect of Cerberus X to delete a Digimon to unsuspend, and then do 2 more. If you have another body on the field, that is. But, if you don't, you can just do 1 more. And that's 3 checks still on sometimes turn 2, dude. Sometimes turn 2 or 3. Yeah, it's really easy. And that's, like, one of the most, like, interesting things about these decks at the moment is they're so aggressive that if your opponent doesn't set up, or your opponent just doesn't have time to set up. If they take a turn to play a tamer, or take a turn to, just be a little bit slower, and you do 4 checks coming out the gates because they were like, oh, I bricked on a 3 and I'll get it next turn. That's not good enough sometimes. So It's crazy. It's crazy that all these like decks nowadays have so much in terms of damage, considering that like now red as an archetype is just almost non-existent, except for in the application of other decks like red purple, red yellow. It's funny. It's interesting. So last but not least, I did just kind of want to talk about the overall way that it might fit into the meta. So this is the top 8 from our last Oceanic Regionals, and I kind of just wanted to be like, hey, let's have a look at this set of decks and see if there's, if does the deck actually stand up to all of these as much as it kind of looks like it might take the, it might, right? Considering that I can sit here and doom and gloom all I want for you on, oh, this card is so crazy, it's so insane, but in the broader scheme, I actually don't think it's going to make as heavy as an impact as maybe I could make it out to just by looking at this here pie chart. So let's take a really quick look at each of these decks and see, does it stand up to most of these. Let's start with the top, Shine Gray. It will eat alive. That deck needs to take a little bit too long these days to get set up. Again, this is a very fast deck. Dex Doragora, I think, has the capacity to deal with it in terms of just fighting for board. The best way that I can think of this deck is that it's very close to Levia in terms of it just doesn't have deletion, which is the cornerstone of why Dex Doragora was kind of good into Levia, right? Like sometimes you had to decide to delete a Dex Doragora, a Doragora, and it would Dex Doragora, Digivolve 3, delete the board, and you just had to walk into that here and there. Whereas this is a card that will just skin it down to nothing. So I think it's going to have a pretty hardcore time dealing with that. Leviamon, this is so you're still going to be playing out Digimon. So if your opponent can set up a Levia X and Trash, a Biting Crush, a lot of the time before they even get to their combo of doing the Lordknight, they may have to walk into the Levia X with the Cerberus and Dark Animal package, which is going to be a skill dependent issue, like a skill matchup, considering that basically you don't have to play a Digimon out, so you can Digivolve 1, but you're losing out on a lot to do that. So it's just you'll still be able to collide into the big Levia or level 5 that's sitting on the field, but it's a bit of a workaround to deal with. SGDL is going to be kind of interesting. I feel so this almost becomes like a tier list, right? But I feel like SGDL would get its ass eaten by this deck. Basically for the fact that you're going to 18k, walking over their massive megas with collision, and then just staring at your opponent and saying, "Good luck, buddy. Have fun," because you'll never get a second chance to actually put another Digimon underneath that gate. They'll always get their Chaos mode, but cool, whatever. But other than that, if you just walk straight into a Rivals Barrage, then that shit sucks. I don't know, dude. You have a lot of Psychmons in your deck too that you can free play out, so that's funny. Angaru is just going to be a race. It's always a race with Angaru. This card is so funny in terms of can I beat you? Yes? No? Great. Magnamon is especially interesting to me because you're able to make it collide because you are making the player pick a target that has blocker, and even if it's immune to effects, you will still have to block because it is a blocker and the player is blocking. If you don't know that whole interaction, I'd suggest looking into it, but your collision will essentially just say, hey, die. That is to say, not including the armor purge, so you don't get 4 checks off Alliance, but you're still kind of clearing a body and getting through the problem of Magna X. Fenriluga again feels like another race matchup. They're racing to get their combo pieces, and you are racing to just kill them. You're both racing to kill each other. So that's gonna be fun. This is seeming a little less thought out than I initially anticipated when I was looking at all of these Digimon. Omniace is a deck that you might actually struggle with now that I look at it, considering the fact that you don't have sometimes a Digimon 2 Digivolve if they just plop down a level 6 and go, hey, you swinging? And if you try to collide into them, they can just go Omni Ace from hand and then just get your shit out of here, brother. So I think that's going to be a interesting one to see. But interestingly enough as well, it's a card that, it does take a little setup. It is a little bit expensive to play out. So the Levia kind of shores that matchup up a little bit. Lilith X, as far as I know, it's going to get eaten alive. It's basically the Dark and Animal Engine with Lilith at the top, and Lilith kind of just sits there. And I'd love for the deck to do a little bit more, but it does kind of just go, can you bounce me or like delete me so that I could pop you instead? And Digivolve is just going to ignore that again. Like I said, Imperialdramon is a deck that should eat shit and die. No, sorry. I'm just kidding. It's. I feel like this is going to be a very, very good matchup for specifically Lordknight. Bend the knee, brother. You're going to have to deal with being Digivolved out of your Imperialdramon, out of your Dragon mode. The only saving grace that I can see for you in this world is if they accidentally trigger training and ignore the Dragon mode on the field, or they trigger the Protoform and ignore the Dragon mode. If you're playing in the grind game, sometimes they can have a little bit stronger of a grind. But yeah, I don't know. This is probably still a skill-dependent matchup. This is kind of just an interim piece, but I did have a lot more of an actual proper think about how it versus Imperialdramon, and I genuinely think that it's going to be very, very skill-dependent in the fact that it's one of those decks that you can have as much like extreme offense as you would like to, and you're able to, walk over bodies super easily. But say you do that, and now your opponent has, you've done 4 checks, and now your opponent has 2 of the Davis and Ken. They play out 2 bodies, and then they DNA into the Imperialdramon, stun down your board for a turn, strip all the sources. You can't do much after that. You are now a sitting duck for at least a turn, if that was the, your kill turn to do 4 checks. And then every single play after that for Imperialdramon is very, very strong. You can do 2 checks, go Primogenitor into the Dragon mode, play out 2 more bodies, instantly DNA them back into another Imperialdramon, do 2 more checks, go do it again, over and over again, until you kill. But, so, it's a skill dependent in whoever goes first is kind of going to be the one on the receiving end of getting a little bit fucked up. As much of a bit of a hater as I am, I think that it's pretty clear to see that. That's kind of just like the top decks that I can think of off the top of my head in terms of like what are good. There's for sure something I'm missing from this list, but it was Tyrant. I'd completely forgotten about this deck. Now, it's kind of one of my favorites, Tyrant, but I do think that Tyrant actually has a surprisingly good matchup into Lordknight, considering the fact that, if you're able to get set up as fast as possible, which, again, Lordknight is very, very fast, you can block these motherfuckers out of the game so quickly. Basically, everything becomes unaffected by effects, so you can't Digivolve it, you can't be collided with. Doesn't matter, you want to be able to redirect things into your Tyrant anyway, and the reason that collision doesn't work is because you're already suspended, so any bodies that are standing are going to, have to swing block the Lordknight, but like, cool, you can just redirect it into a massive, absolutely huge Tyrant Kabuteri. You're able to play out bodies that have evade for the Levia, for example, or the Anubis even, and then you're able to just constantly bottom deck your opponent and then finally go in for those kill shots. And you can kind of take your time to do those kill shots because you just have to set up an extremely wide board. Better than that is 2 other things. One, with the new Kabu, I think it's Mega Kabuteri, you're able to trash the Protoform off of the top of the deck by, you swing into the Digimon, you kill the Digimon, they activate their Protoform, and then Protoform goes to the thing, and then you trash it from the top of security, get that shit the fuck out of there, and that doesn't help them to just constantly recover and constantly reuse their Protoforms. And then, you just, do another check after that with Piercing, for example. Again, bottom decking things every single turn. If you're, getting started, they decide they want to swing because finally they have the ability to, walk over or walk around your Tyrant, and then you get to like ace over the top of what do you call it with Grand Quagga, and that will really give you that ability to what's the like suspend the other bodies down, so you don't have to worry about everything coming at you all at once. And even if they unsuspend with the Cerberus X, then you suspend it straight back down. Just say no more. No, do not get up. Do not get up again. And really importantly as well, the next set is also bringing kind of some new support for Tyrant Kabuteru, which I might talk about in another video, but I will just lightly bring it up here. Mostly in the form of this here Ancient Beetlemon, because you're able to, you know, on play, because it has rule type, rule trait Insectoid, you're able to play it out with the Tyrant Kabuteru. You're able to digivolve over it with Tyrant Kabuterumon, and then you digivolve two of your opponent's Digimon. That really clears up a lot of that. Does it like we're talking a lot here about like how much digivolving does to your opponent. This is just great. So I'm only going to talk about that really briefly. That this is going to be a very good addition to Tyrant Kabuteru, and whether or not we see that kind of become, you know, like the hybrid base for Tyrant Kabuteru would be very interesting. But again, like it's what's the word for it? I kind of genuinely think that it has a pretty good matchup into Lordknight X, to be honest. Blue Flare is looking really strong in the next set. I'm keen to see how that plays. Oh, and apparently Red Hybrid is really good because again, you're just racing your opponent. And I'm excited for that. Let me tell you, Red Hybrid aficionado over here. And from some of the lists that I've been seeing in Japan, looks like they're copying me. Except I missed a really big piece in the analog youths. I don't know why I didn't put those in. That was a silly move from me, from somebody who was walking back to actually use the Agunimon promo and the old AncientGarurumon again. Like as soon as I put those in, the deck was feeling fantastic. But I see the value in an analog youth. But yeah, I also kind of want to talk a little bit about like how Purple Hybrid seems like it's going to have a really good matchup with against Lordknight X in the next set, just because like you can you know, set up a level 5, and if they swing, you can go Seraphi Ace, assuming that they don't digivolve your, you know, your level 5 down to whatever, a 4 back to a Tamer or whatever. But you can kind of just wait for them to, you know, overplay and then walk into that, because a lot of the time they are going to want to walk out, get those checks done, sort of thing. But I haven't had like, I mean, I've 2-0'd like at least once off the top of my brain with Purple Hybrid, but one of those games was super invalidated because I just went Anubis on turn 2. But it is an interesting like concept. I think it's definitely a, like, I think that Purple Hybrid is actually like surprisingly decent as well. It's a very strong deck. It's very control heavy, and that is what I think might be a good way to, you know, fuck with Lordknight X in a sense. You know, if you can get to Venusmon, which is a card people are playing in Purple Hybrid now, then you can just blank them for a turn, and even if they raise, they can't use any of their wind digivolving effects and do nothing for a turn while you're just doing these quick chips real fast against your opponent. You could play like Ancient Garu to just bounce the what do you call it, and get it out of there. But no, I think like Purple Hybrid, it is still just another like skill dependent matchup, and I think most of these will be, but I think that it's very doable still, which is like good to see. And that's just a quick like primer for like all of these decks versus Lordknight X. Again, you know, I'm not going to know what is the best thing coming into the next meta. I often have a good time figuring out that I'm just have no finger on the pulse of what's happening. But, you know, I enjoy talking about these sort of things of like, oh, this deck would be really good into that. And this deck would be great against Lordknight X. And all of this is kind of to say that, you know, I don't think that Lordknight X is going to be as oppressive here in the West as it is, or has shown that it kind of is in Japan at the moment. But if there's any decks that you feel like I've missed with this, you know, set of all these cool cards, all these archetypes, if there's any decks that you think are going to have a really good time against specifically Lordknight X, put it down in the comments. I'd love to chat to you about it. I read and chat to every single comment down below. Anyway, I just really wanted to yap about Lordknight X as I've played a few games with it. I just hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it, because it's really cool to me, and now that I've been poisoned in the brain by all of these purple decks, I'm kind of excited to see whether or not Bandai will actually hit the Dark Animal engine. You know, considering that like Protoform is crazy, and it's funny to me that we hadn't jumped on it earlier. We had all of this available to us way back last year at like the championships when Anubismon was at 4. Some people probably did play it. But yeah, I think Protoform is a big enabler for this engine, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bandai came out of the woodwork to take a hit at the engine, as they pretty often do. They don't want this much cheating of memory gain. They don't want this much drawing and trashing going on. We saw that in scatter mode. We saw the Evo reduction hits in Greymon X. We've seen time and time again, those are the cards they hit because it's too much. It's just too much. It's too much. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Lordknightmon X, coming out soon. What are yours? Do you think you'll be picking it up as soon as version 2.0 gets released? Do you think we'll see an absolute influx of people playing this at your locals? And will it be as strong as some people expect? And honestly, is there a way to play Royal Base against this? Because I'm getting eaten alive out here every time I play against Lordknight, and I really want to play the bees. Thank you all for watching. I hope you're having a good weekend wherever you are. I'll see you on the next video. Hopefully I'll have the BT19 Japanese box opening all edited together for you before the next set releases, because it's a freaking banger. Anyway, bye!